Morning, everybody. David Shapiro, and I am back. I'm back a little bit early, but that's because I'm going to be spending a little bit more time making sure that my videos are more well thought out and a little bit more meaningful. So the pace of my videos will be slower, but the quality should be higher in terms of meaning and impact. So, with all that said, let's dive in. Today's video is about mission, and mission is the most important thing in the age of AI. And I imagine you clicked on this video because the thumbnail, meaning is out, mission is in. So let's unpack this. And I'm not going to bore you to death with postnihilism or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about specifically mission today. So right off the bat, the definition of mission that I use for this is mission refers to a guiding purpose or clear goal that gives direction to one's life, driving actions and decisions in alignment with a deeply held belief or value. Okay, so let's dive in. What does this mean? What does it look like? What are the characteristics of missions? What are the kinds of missions that are out there? And yeah, we'll give a few examples as well. All right, so first, the characteristics of a mission. Number one, it's a clear goal. It's a specific and unambiguous objective. Like get to the moon, get man on the moon, as JFK said. They're bigger than oneself. They extend beyond your personal interest to a larger cause. The larger cause could be one other person. It might be the entire planet, as we'll see when we unpack some of these types of missions in just a moment. They're not egocentric. So this is a really important one, is that they focus on the well-being of others rather than just self-enrichment. That's one of the key things. One of the most important characteristics of a good mission. And we will also talk about toxic missions or negative missions. They have a definitive outcome or result. So in order to have a good mission, you need to clearly articulate what the result is. And so that's why I mean like clear goal, but it also needs to have a definitive outcome. Like what is the outcome look like? Vision for world change. So in this case, it is a specific alteration that you want to see in the world. How do you want the world to be different if you succeed? Let's see. The next one is it requires commitment and sacrifice. So basically, this means that it demands some level of dedication or sacrifice. If it's easy, then it's not really a good mission, because if it's not challenging to you, it's not taking you out of your comfort zone. And if it's that easy, then anyone could do it. But a mission is something that you might be uniquely suited for, or that you might be able to do better. And we'll talk about the characteristics, like how do you identify your mission in just a moment. It inspires and motivates you. If a mission is something that is not inspiring and not energizing, it's probably not a good mission. It might not even be your real mission. It's also guided by ethics and principles. So if it's not couched in some sort of moral framework or morality, and I'm not saying which moral framework or which ethical framework or which values or principles you need to abide by, because there's plenty out there, as we'll talk about in just a moment. But if it is not couched in some rigorously thought out and scrutinized moral framework or ethical principles, then it's not a good mission. And then finally, it aims to solve a specific problem. So these are the characteristics of a mission, specifically a good mission. All right, so I know that Elon Musk is very polarizing and controversial, but I like this example because this mission, one of his personal missions, is get humanity to Mars. And this one, you can see that it is very simply and clearly articulated. It is bold, it is courageous, and it meets all of these criteria. It's got a very clear goal: get humanity to Mars, colonize Mars so that we're a multiplanetary species. It's inspiring and motivating because it's a very clear problem. And, to be fair, it's not entirely different from JFK's mission to, get man on the moon. It's just the next logical step. It's bigger than himself because it's not just about like, I want to get myself to Mars. He does want to get himself to Mars, but that's fine. It solves a particular problem. So the problem that he's trying to solve is the existential risk of having only a single planet. I don't know that it's possible. So personally, I think that getting humanity to Mars is actually a pretty dumb idea. So I want to color that while I use this as an example, I hold up Elon Musk, get humanity to Mars, as an example of a good mission, I don't particularly agree with it. I think it's a dumb idea. But that being said, it still represents a good mission. And also, one thing to keep in mind about missions is that not everyone has to agree. I'm not saying that there's one universal set of principles or missions that everyone should adhere to. But I did outline some characteristics of good missions. It requires commitment and sacrifice. Obviously, he spends a tremendous amount of his time and energy on SpaceX, which means that he doesn't have that much of a personal life. He's actually talked about that in interviews where he's like, people probably wouldn't want to be me if they knew more about my life because I'm actually pretty lonely. Which, if his mission in life was to have a more rich social life, he probably could achieve that. But right now, he's got a mission that requires the sacrifice of family and social life. And of course, he's criticized for that because he's got 11 children now or something that he doesn't really give that much attention to. And you could say that that could be a moral failing. And I'm not here to make any judgment on that, but I'm just saying that he does have a clear mission and he is making sacrifices for that mission. Let's see. And then finally, it is rooted in principles. And so again, very controversial. Elon Musk is a long-termist. Which basically says that the future humans that don't exist yet, that they matter too, and particularly when you look at the fact or the possibility that if humanity does colonize multiple star systems, there could be trillions of humans that exist in the future, and so that we have a moral obligation to them, even though they don't exist yet. Again, I don't agree with long-termism. I think it's an idiotic thing, but the fact of the matter is that Elon Musk's mission is couched in a particular moral philosophy. Now, as an example of a much smaller mission that many people might have, this one is be the parent you should have had. There are plenty of people that have this mission. Some of my best friends actually. One of my friends, she jokes, she's like, we're not going to make the same mistakes our parents did. We're going to mess our children up in entirely new ways. But the point is that she's taking lessons from the failures of her parents, and she's deliberately trying to do better. So again, very clear goal. Be the parent you should have had. You've got an idea of the failures that your parents had, and you study how to become a better parent. It's bigger than yourself. It's about sacrificing for a child. And anyone who's a parent knows that being a parent requires a tremendous amount of sacrifice. Time, energy, sanity, money, everything. I mean, cleaning spit up and changing diapers, oh my God. Anyways, it's not egocentric. Because again, it's about if you truly put the needs of your child before yourself, you might say that oh, well, you get ego rewards because then you get to pump yourself up as a good parent. Sure, you can be proud of your achievement, but if you're just signaling that you're a good parent through your child, you're probably not engaging with your mission correctly. Because there are certainly plenty of parents that do that either live vicariously through their children or use their children more like a trophy as an extension of themselves rather than paying attention to, just being a good parent. So being a good parent is more about virtue ethics. It's about being the right agent. And so that would, in philosophy and ethics, you'd call that a deontological framework where it's about being the right person, and then whatever outcome happens is the desired outcome of that mission. Now, in this case, it does say, have a definitive outcome or result, but defining that definitive outcome or result is harder. So in the case of being the parent that you should have had, the outcome or result that you might choose is, I want my child to be as happy and successful as possible, right? I want them to achieve their highest potential in terms of life satisfaction and well-being. Whereas, of course, many parents will choose other objectives. I want my child to make as much money as possible. I want my child to get the highest education possible. They have other success metrics that are external to the child. And so this is one thing that can be problematic is if the definition of success that you set for your child is external, that can lead to things like perfectionism and workaholism. Whereas if the success metrics are internal to your child, such as I want them to be happy, I want them to have well-being, I want them to feel safe, or whatever, any number of things. So again, having a good mission means articulating and clarifying these things to yourselves. It solves a problem. The problem that being the parent you should have had says, my parents could have done better. for whatever reason, whether it was social or cultural or religious or family history or environmental factors, whatever. My parents didn't do the best job that they could have, so I am going to fix that problem and I'm going to do better. It requires commitment and sacrifice. I already mentioned that. And then finally, it's guided by ethics and values. It is that value system is a commitment to being the right parent. As I just mentioned, it's a deontological framework. Now, identifying your mission. So by now, you're probably like, Dave, I get it. Missions are good. Okay, cool. How do I figure out what my mission is? So here's a few principles that you can use to identify what your mission is. First of all, first and foremost, it's a calling, not a choosing. You don't choose your mission chooses you. Sometimes it can be a compelling urge, something that you have that you just feel intensely that you must do. That's how it is for me. In other cases, it's a reaction to something that happens to you. And I've got a couple examples in just a moment. Your mission is usually scary. It can be really intimidating. It demands courage, change, and commitment. Usually your mission seems like something that is insurmountable at first. And I'll talk about my relationship to my mission and why it's just like, it feels like climbing Everest. But that's a good thing. It's rooted in your gifts or experience. Basically, you either are born with or you develop unique talents and abilities, or your life gives you unique experiences, either of which or both, it doesn't have to be either, give you energy and passion for specific problems or issues or goals. So the first example is an old friend of mine. Her dad was a disabled veteran, and he had some kind of chronic problem with his leg. He was in a tremendous amount of pain because of an old injury to his leg, and they were very poor. They were from the rural countryside, and he basically died slowly because he couldn't take care of himself and couldn't work, and so that experience, that pain of watching her dad struggle and suffer, gave her the energy and focus to become an occupational therapist. She saw a very clear problem and wanted to solve it. And so that was her mission in life. My mission in life is that basically I've always been a problem solver. That's what I built my IT career on, and then I switched to AI. And now I'm switching more to humanity more broadly, but still in the context of AI and the way that AI is changing everything. And so my personal mission is steer humanity towards utopia. It has taken a long time to distill it down into those 4 words. But that is my mission in life. And that is my mission, not necessarily because I chose it, but because I looked at what resonated with me and what my unique capabilities and life experience and everything kind of pushed me towards. And again, it took me a while to articulate that because I was like paying attention to, okay, like I'm working on artificial intelligence. Now I'm working on narratives. Now I'm working on philosophy. What is the central organizing theme of all these things that I'm trying to do? And now I have articulated it into 4 simple words. Just like how Elon Musk says, get humanity to Mars, 4 words. Now, I'm not saying that you have to articulate your mission as simply as 4 words. And I'm also not saying that it's going to be easy. It's taken me literally 4 years of work to get it that clear and simple. Now, it also has to be aligned with values. If you don't study values, whether those are Christian values or Muslim values or post-nihilistic values or long-termism or effective altruism or whatever, whatever mission you pick needs to align with whatever values really resonate with you. And you can come up with your own value system, as I did with post-nihilism, but that's not necessarily required. There are lots of value systems out there, but as long as you have a value system, a moral or ethical system that you can use to align your mission, that is a good way to help identify your mission. And finally, it's a path to follow. It's a direction. It's your personal Mount Everest. So those are some general principles that you can use to identify your mission. Okay, so as promised, I want to talk about some types of positive missions. So just because you're not doing something as ambitious as getting humanity to Mars or steering humanity towards utopia, there are plenty of other kinds of missions. So, number one, creative missions. There are plenty of people out there that have a creative vision. A friend of mine talked about how she wanted to write a beautiful coming of age story. That is a great creative mission. There are service oriented missions, whether it's volunteerism, firefighting, caregiving, teaching. These service oriented missions are really, really good missions to have because they're intrinsically bigger than yourself. One thing that I do want to say about service oriented missions is that some people are conditioned to self sacrifice and serve others. This often happens because they were very put upon in their families. Either they were required to take care of their siblings or even take care of their parents or other family members, and they were forced to sacrifice their own needs. And so, this is why caregiving professions in particular are highly subject to burnout, is because the people who gravitate towards caregiving missions, they have a relationship schema in their head from their family of origin that basically teaches them your needs don't matter, everyone else's needs matter more than yours. So if service-oriented and caregiving missions resonate with you, my recommendation is examine your childhood and your family just to make sure that you're not going to burn yourself out. I'm not saying it's a bad mission. It can be a great mission, but make sure that you don't harm yourself in the process. Fixing problems in society. There have been plenty of people out there who have embraced or embarked on missions of fixing problems that they see in society, whether it's solving a problem with technology or criticizing things. George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians of all time, he didn't necessarily have a mission of fixing problems in society, but he certainly identified them. He loved calling out cognitive dissonance. Now, the thing is, some of these kinds of missions, for instance, fixing problems in society, can easily be flipped to negative or toxic missions. So, for instance, some of the worst crimes against humanity that have happened in the 20th and 21st century were because someone saw a problem in society and went about fixing it in a particular way, such as eradicating an ethnicity. So just be mindful that you might have a problem, but the method that you choose is really important. Eugenics is another example of people seeing problems in society and going about it, solving it in the wrong way. And we'll talk about characteristics of toxic missions in just a moment. Overcoming barriers. So whether it's gender equality, civil rights, sexual freedom, whatever, changing society so that it becomes more egalitarian, more just, or whatever, those are also really great missions. Which is one of the reasons that, like, for instance, social justice warriors and wokeism, it resonates so much. But another thing to keep in mind is that a lot of people do virtue signaling, where they will don the trappings of having a particular mission, but really they're not necessarily doing it for the right reason. They're doing it because they're lashing out from anger, or they're coming at it from a place of insecurity, or that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that all social justice warriors are like that. I'm not saying that all wokeism is like that, but a lot of it is. And so make sure that when you are engaging in overcoming barriers or some kind of problem like that in society, that it's coming from the right place. There's exploration and discovery. I used to think that I was a scientist and that I wanted to go explore the stars, but it turns out I'm a problem solver. Now, that being said, people that do science for the sake of science, or engineering for the sake of engineering, to innovate and explore and find new information, this is also a really good set of mission objectives. And finally, advocacy and activism. One of my side missions is to advocate for autism and neurodiversity, basically to raise awareness for the lived experience of people like myself, gifted, ADHD, autism, whatever, HSP. So championing a cause in order to raise visibility or to help push social change, such as tolerance or dignity or whatever. These can also be another set of good, positive missions. Okay, so what are the benefits of missions? Like, why choose this thing? Because, if it requires sacrifice and all these other things, like, why do it? And so one of the primary things is that it gives your life focus, meaning, purpose, and structure. Having a mission around which to organize your life is it's incredible. It gives you so much to do in terms of knowing where your life's going. It gives you a sense of agency, and it also feels like it gives you control. One thing that I realized recently about having a mission in my life is that working towards that mission, for a long time, I felt like I had no sense of control. I had an external locus of control. But one emotional breakthrough that I had recently is that mission gives you an internal locus of control. It says, this is my mission, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And it it also facilitates you to have a very rigorous and structured or systematic approach to things. So I just read a book called Leadership in Turbulent Times, which is about several of the greatest presidents in American history. And one thing that they all had in common was that they had the personal mission of becoming president. Now they didn't become president by, charging through and just saying, I'm going to be president, I'm entitled to be president. They changed themselves over time. They used working towards the presidency as the litmus test, as the graduation that they matriculated against in order to judge their own progress and their own qualities and own merits as a person. So Abraham Lincoln, for instance, is remembered as being very diplomatic, but he was not diplomatic when he was a young man. He was an a-hole, let's say. He mocked people. He was sarcastic. He used his wit and rhetorical skill to shred people. Like, he was pretty awful. But he realized that quality would not get him to his goal, and so he learned to change his behavior and change his approach to people and diplomacy in order to be the right agent to serve that mission. And then through that hard work, he was the right agent to help America break away from slavery. It earns friends and affection. So a former girlfriend of mine told me, we were talking about video game characters, and there was a video game character that she liked that I didn't particularly like. And she's like, well, he's passionate. I was like, what? Like, yeah, he's passionate, and passionate is really sexy. And I'm like, really? Like, that was wake up call for me. Anyways, having a mission in life makes you really attractive to people, whether it's to romantic or sexual partners or even just friends. I can't tell you the number of really interesting friends that I have earned by having a mission and like courageously embracing and embarking on that mission. And so, yeah, like it does win you friends. Now, that being said, there's a lot of learning along the way, because like I've allowed the wrong people into my life. So, because the bigger of a target you are, the more that people will target you for manipulation and exploitation. So I have to be very discerning. But that's a good problem to have, honestly. Because if people want to be near you and around you, then it's just up to you to pick and choose the good ones. Anyways, getting lost down a rabbit hole. It attracts help and support. I cannot tell you the number of times that people have reached out to me, and either in some cases they wanted something from me at first, but by the end of the call, they heard just how clear my mission was. And by the end of the call or conversation, they said, how can I help you? That has happened to me literally hundreds of times now, because my mission is so clear. And it resonates with people, and people want to support a mission that resonates with them. It's deeply satisfying. On the one hand, I do still have some workaholism in me, and so I always move the goalposts on myself, as my wife points out. But that being said, when I look back at what I have achieved and what I want to achieve, it is very satisfying to know that I have lived a life of meaning and purpose, and that and accomplishment not for its own sake. Because here's an example. Ronald Reagan was deeply, deeply problematic for a lot of reasons, but he achieved a lot. And one of the things he said is, how did he say it? It was like, it's surprising how much you can achieve if you don't mind who gets the credit. And for me, because my mission is bigger than myself and it's about the change that I want to see in the world, I don't necessarily need credit for it. And by letting go of the need for self-aggrandizement, it's more about like, okay, I'm having this effect, it's a drop in the bucket because I'm just one people out of 8 billion on the planet, all of us trying to, make ends meet and make the world a little bit better. But at the same time, it's very satisfying to know that I made these choices and these sacrifices, and that I've had a positive impact. And then another thing is, this is what I'm coming to learn, and this is why I'm actually sharing this on my channel about AI, is that mission is a completely different narrative to the dignity of labor. So if you don't know, the dignity of labor is a deeply American idea that was really codified in terms of public policy by FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, while he was trying to tackle the Great Depression. So the dignity of labor became the default policy of America, both culturally and economically, because one of the things that he did was he did an experiment during the Great Depression, which is one, he just gave people money. It was basically a very early experiment of universal basic income. And then secondly, they paid to have people do things like work in forests. And what they found is that paying people to do work was better for the morale, but it also achieved better results at the time. This was in the early 30s, I believe. And so the conclusion that FDR came to after doing these experiments was that Americans needed the dignity of labor. And that's a difficult narrative to argue against. It's been the de facto policy for literally 100 years now, or almost 100 years now. But having a mission is an alternative narrative that doesn't require labor income. Now, missions are still a labor of love, but it's a different kind of relationship to having purpose and meaning in life. Okay, so we've talked about positive missions, and we've sliced and diced them 8 ways from Sunday. Let's talk about toxic missions. Okay, so the will to power, the root of all evil. Friedrich Nietzsche said that basically you need to become an Übermensch and that you need to overcome and yada, yada, yada. So his nihilistic outlook emphasized the abandonment of traditional values and morality and said, basically don't seek happiness, seek power. Seek power for its own sake. And so this he called the will to power. And he basically said that all people are driven fundamentally by a desire to assert and enhance their own power. That's one way of looking at life. But this nihilistic worldview literally underpins every toxic mission of the 20th and 21st century, which we will go into in just a second. And if you look at the last century of consequences of this idea, you will see. And so basically, I am just going to say that Nietzschean philosophy is categorically evil. And yes, I know that's a value judgment, and I will die on this hill. So here's why. Here are some types of toxic missions. Wealth and power accumulation for their own sake. There are plenty of people out there, I'm sure you can think of a few, that want wealth and power just because they want wealth and power. And they're not doing it for any greater purpose. That is the be all end all because they have adopted into this nihilistic Nietzschean philosophy of don't seek happiness, don't seek meaning or purpose, just seek power. And that's a really empty life. But it also is often very harmful and destructive. Revenge missions. So there are plenty of people out there who feel righteously justified in seeking retaliation, either against individuals or entire groups of people. I'm not going to cite any specific examples, but I'm sure you can imagine a few. Likewise, hatred-based missions or negative emotions driving something, so whether it's animosity, bigotry, any kind of judgment against a category of people or an individual or another family or whatever. Exploitation. So basically, if your mission is to exploit or hurt or undermine others, that's probably not a good mission. It's probably a toxic mission. Any egocentric mission is probably going to be a toxic mission. If it's based on self-interest, self-aggrandizement, self-gratification, or self-enrichment, and that is the terminal goal, is just to enrich yourself or to pump yourself up, then it's probably not a good mission. And then deprivation missions. And so basically deprivation mission is you're trying to fill a hole in your life. Whether you were were deprived love and warmth at home, or whether you feel entitled to something that you didn't get. If you feel deprived of something and you're trying to earn it back, that again is a kind of toxic mission. It's an egocentric mission. All right, so what are some characteristics of toxic missions? How do you know if your mission has switched from positive to toxic? Because remember, many missions can slip into the dark side very easily. And so some of the characteristics of toxic missions, if they're self-centered, as I just talked about, they're egocentric, they're self-centered, they're focused on personal enrichment, that sort of thing. If they're driven by any kind of negative emotions, whether it's anger, revenge, even anxiety. So one thing that I realized is that anxiety can drive people to a lot of negative missions, whether that is getting control of people. So like if you have anxious attachment disorders, then you might be very possessive of your partner or friends, and you might set out the mission to have and control as many friends as you can. And you might say that, like, you could even say that this underpins personality disorders like narcissism, where anxiety and anxious attachment underpins much of cluster B personality disorders. Now, I'm not here to dole out diagnosis, and in fact, I personally want to depathologize these things, but that's a topic for another video. Lacking any ethical guidance. So the absence of moral or ethical frameworks or values, if your mission is not couched inside of some kind of post-conventional moral framework, then it's probably, that doesn't mean that it's categorically a toxic mission, but it is certainly at risk of being a toxic mission if it is not colored and shaped by some value structure. And again, like I said earlier, I'm not going to say that there's one value structure to rule them all. There's plenty of value structures out there, but as long as you have a value structure that is validated by culture and society, you're probably going to be in better shape. Inconsistency. If the actions that you take in pursuit of your mission are logically or morally or terminally or instrumentally inconsistent, you probably have a toxic mission, or you might have a toxic mission. And the result here might just be that you need to clarify the outcome that you're looking for. So I want to make sure that even if your mission slips into the toxic space, that doesn't mean that it is categorically a bad mission. It could be that you're going about it the wrong way or for the wrong reasons. Short-term focus. This is one of the biggest problems that I see, particularly in the business world, and also particularly in American politics, because a lot of people are just looking, for the next election cycle or the next quarterly report. And so by incentivizing short-term thinking, we will often kind of, play this moral game of hide the cheese or whatever. And so that is often one of the biggest problems and it's also really easy to recognize. Is your focus short-term or long-term? If it's long-term, it could be good. Now, the biggest caveat to all this is if whatever your mission is, if you switch into a mindset of the ends justify the means, that is one of the easiest ways to switch to a toxic mission. So these are some characteristics of toxic missions. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there might be a problem that you want to solve in the world, but if you go about it the wrong way or with the wrong framework or for the wrong reasons, it can easily become a toxic mission. Okay, so conclusion. I want to talk a little bit more about AI and mission-oriented living because, again, that's why I'm here. AI is really forcing us to look into this mirror, and a lot of people are kind of, lost and confused and afraid of the future. And so what I really want to say is that AI is going to allow all of us to live more mission-oriented lives. So first, AI is a transformational force. I have done videos and talked on podcasts about post-labor economics. Basically, the assertion is that AI is probably going to dislocate or destroy permanently a lot of human labor. And so then we're going to have to renegotiate our relationship to labor and the social contract of the dignity of labor and all that other stuff. But rather than view AI as a destructive force, you can view it as a transformational force so that we can transition away from routine. So this is point 2, the liberation from routine. So rather than getting on the productivity treadmill just so that you can pay bills and put food on the table and pay your mortgage payment and pay for your kids to go to school, AI can disrupt all that, meaning that we can focus on greater purpose, bigger meaning, and our missions. And so by saying like, okay, well, maybe we don't need the dignity of labor, but we do still need mission. We need a mission in life. And for many people, their job is their mission, right? Or their family is their mission. Certainly, one of the things that I struggled with in my IT career was it was a good career. It was challenging, but it didn't serve my mission. The happiest that I was in my IT career was when I was working at Cisco Systems, which is a tech giant, and one of the customers that I helped support was NASA. And so, like, knowing that the work that I did supported NASA, that gave me a sense of purpose and mission. And once I left Cisco, I never had that sense of mission again because all the other companies that I was supporting were not nearly as cool as NASA, right? And so, but now, having broken away from the corporate grind, I am focusing on the biggest mission that I possibly can, which gives me a tremendous amount of sense of meaning. AI is also an enhancer of human potential. Basically, AI helps do a lot of things. Most of this slide deck was drafted with the help of AI. Now, I didn't just say like write the whole thing for me. I was driving, I was steering, but the words on the page are largely written by AI, but it's doing what I told it to, and I was able to draft this whole thing in about an hour. Likewise, I use AI to help provide critique for my fiction. As everyone knows, AI is really awful at writing fiction, but it's really good at providing feedback. So it's a really great critique partner. And again, that accelerates my creative endeavors and it brings me to a new level. Because if I tell the AI, I was like, be ruthless, shred my work, tell me everything I'm doing wrong, it is happy to do so. And it will be mean if you want it to be mean. It'll also be nice if you want it to be nice. A partner in these creative pursuits. So again, there's a lot of debate right now about AI, people using AI, image generators and copywriters and stuff. And certainly it is disrupting the industry out there. But as I just illustrated, whether your endeavors are intellectual or creative or whatever mission you have, AI is there to help. The existence of ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and all these other AI tools have greatly accelerated me in pursuing my particular mission. And that's what I want to really drive home, is that if you look at AI as able to help drive your mission forward, you're going to have a very different relationship with AI, and you're not going to be afraid about losing your job, with the exception of you need to eat, right? But that's why I also talk about post-labor economics, because we need to make sure that people have their needs met. But AI is going to make sure that we can all get our basic needs met very easily. That's the goal. And then finally, democratizing opportunities. Here's an example. I am not a visual thinker. If I describe something, the image that I get in my head is very different from what image generators produce. But that being said, using image generators gives me entirely new capabilities for artistic expression and communication. And so imagine that this expands to all other classes, because here's the thing is writers going on strike, I understand because their career is threatened. However, what I don't understand is the desire to gatekeep the art of writing. Because as an artist, as a creative, as an intellectual, I see it as intrinsically a good thing if more people are able to tell stories, if more people are able to communicate their ideas, their emotions, their principles, and their dreams with more mediums. Granted, that being said, I do understand the impulse to gatekeep, because if you're special, you want to stay special. But I don't think that gatekeeping is a kind thing to do when there are people that want to express themselves that can't. And so democratizing opportunities is another way of looking at AI as a boon to humanity rather than a threat. Embracing your mission. So one of my calls to action is I want everyone who watches this video to embrace your mission. I ran a poll recently, and I think it was more than 50% of you said that you either agree that you have a very clear mission, or that you're near your mission, that you're somewhat aligned with your mission. But if you're not, for those of you that aren't, I want you to find your mission. Think about the natural talents and passions that you have. Think about the experiences that you have in life that make you unique and that make you uniquely suited to pursue something. It's a journey. A lot of people say like, oh, it's the journey, not the destination. It's a journey just because your mission never ends. This is something that I'm coming to terms with, is that you do have to pace yourself, because you can definitely burn yourself out if you go full tilt into your mission. Now, that being said, it is about the experiences that you have along the way, the friends that you make along the way. Build a community around yourself. Find people that agree with your mission. There's been so many comments on some of my videos of people And I was even like this when I got started. Nobody knew about AI. And so by building this YouTube channel that has over 60,000 subscribers now, there is now a huge community of people that think similarly to me, that have the same goals, missions, and curiosities. And so, like, having that community to organize, and I'm not saying that you need to have a 60,000 member community. If you just have 6 friends, right, that that agree with your mission, or that resonate with it, or that you know, that are on the same mission, that's the way to go. Make a difference. It doesn't matter how big or small of a difference you make. But so this concept comes from ancient Greece, eudaimonia, which is basically do the most good for the most people that you're able to, that is within your capacity, and that is a good KPI for pursuing your mission. If you objectively improve the quality of life for just one person, you're doing things right. And then start now. It takes time. Like I said earlier in the video, I've been working on my mission for the last 4 years, since I kind of had an awakening and started working towards it. There's no time like the present. And what I will say is, it's been difficult. It's been painful at times, but if I had to, I would do it all again in a heartbeat, just without a second thought. And finally, pick better leaders. Select leaders with clear missions. Don't pick Loki because he has a clear mission, but it's a bad mission. It's a toxic mission. But choose business and political leaders who have a well-defined altruistic mission that serves a greater purpose. Understand their motivations and the causes that they champion. Some billionaires out there, their mission is clearly just make more money for the sake of making more money. I'm not going to name any names, but I'm sure you can think of a few. There are others out there who do have altruistic missions. Granted, they should all be scrutinized because $1 billion gives them a lot of power. But holding them accountable with your voice by demanding high standards, the second point here, hold them accountable by expecting them to articulate their missions clearly and demonstrate commitment through action. Look for internal and external consistency. Actions speak louder than words. Evaluate them not just by what they say, but what they do. And make sure that that their actions actually truly align with their espoused value frameworks and mission objectives. And honestly, I think that every billionaire should have a publicly published manifesto of, this is my mission, this is my value framework, and here's my track record. Like, if you want to stay a billionaire, you should do that. And then you should make sure that your values align with that. Now, one thing to say about like having a mission statement or publicly espousing these things is they can be flexible. Like I said, it's taken me 4 years to fully articulate my mission and my value framework. And I'm sure that it's not going to be static, right? It's going to evolve as I learn and grow as a person. So that doesn't, just because someone learns, grows, and change, doesn't mean that we should criticize them for that, unless they go in the bad direction. Then you should criticize them. We're in a new global era. Using, like, if all you take away from this video is the importance of missions are good, missions are important, and then you pay attention to that when you vote, if you pay attention to that when you choose companies to do business with, then that alone is going to steer humanity towards a better future. Again, my mission, steer humanity towards utopia. You can help do that by paying attention to missions. And then finally, your role is pay attention, talk about it, but more specifically, vote. Vote with your regular vote, vote with your wallet, vote with your feet. You know, if you work for a company that doesn't have a good mission or even has a toxic mission, or you work for people that have toxic missions, leave. If there are politicians that have toxic missions, vote them out. If there are businesses that have toxic missions, don't do business with them. One example is Brandon Sanderson, who is one of the richest authors in the world, sci-fi writer or fantasy, speculative fiction writer. He refuses to do business with Amazon. Why? Because Amazon gouges creative types. And so even though he's taking a financial loss, he's doing it on principle. And so that is a man that I can get behind. He's got a mission, a creative mission, and in this case, it's about saying something at personal cost, at personal expense. That is the sacrifice that he's making to make that statement. So that's what I see as an example of a good leader. Thank you for watching. I hope you got a lot out of this. Cheers.